So today we are going to discuss a very important topic, which is the Telecommunication Act. Why I am saying Act? Because the President of India has given assent to that bill. Now it's an Act, although it will be implemented when the federal government notifies its implementation. So it's an Act, right? So we will study some important features of this Act and also see the significance of the Act. Largely our focus will be on the critical aspects, the problems or issues or criticisms which this Act has generated. That is what our major focus will be, right? So let us see some of the important features of the Act. Telecom Act 2023. You see, this Telecom Act 2023 replaces three old laws. The principal law being 1885 Telegraph Act. So, the telecommunication sector in India was governed by an act known as the Telegraph Act 1885. As you know, this Telegraph Act 1885, although amended from time to time, essentially a colonial legislation, which means the developments, changes, innovations experienced by the telecommunication network or telecom sector have not been incorporated into the provisions of the Act. That's one. Apart from that, there are two more acts which were also repealed by this Telecom Act. One was the Wireless Telegraphy Act 1933 and Unauthorized Possession of Telegraph Wires Act 1950, which we have provided in the booklet. Now, some significant features of this Act are: number one, it provides for an authorization regime. Authorization regime, which means the federal government will authorize the carrying out of telecom activities, telecommunication services by various entities. So, authorization is mandatory. That is that will be awarded by the, or that will be given by the federal government. So, authorization for carrying out telecom services or telecommunication business in India is necessary. That is one, authorization. Second one is that it provides for spectrum allocation. As you know, the telecom businesses, telecom services require spectrum, and we have been dealing with 5G, right? 4G, 5G, etc. So, spectrum allocation is something which is dealt by this Act. It provides for two types of allocation. One, I would say, auction. One method of allocating the spectrum is auction. Another one is administrative allocation. When I am using the word auction, as you know, auction means what? It's like whoever pays more, and people are the players will come and they will quote prices, and whoever pays more and whoever fulfills those category or requirement will be given auction. Auction is one of the method which is provided under this spectrum allocation. Another one is administrative, which means the government will allocate, right, based upon administrative decisions. In fact, if you see, there is a schedule within this Act which provides that the administrative allocation methods will be applicable for a large number of activities, including, let's say, the metro rail, community radio. Apart from that, one important aspect is satellite communication. Satellite communication, SATCOM. Satellite communication is for satellite communication, this administrative allocation method will be used, right? So this is a significant aspect of it, because we'll see that in significance. Why is it so? Not only that, this provides for what we call grievance redressal mechanism. Grievance redressal mechanism. Like, you must be aware of a lot of calls and SMS which you receive, right? From telemarketing agencies, insurance agencies, banks, credit card, etc., etc. And most of us must have been facing difficulties like, right, how to avoid, how to stop them. So this bill or this act provides that central government can make rules for prior consent of the customer, which means without the prior consent of the customer, like you and me, such messages or calls should not be sent to you. So prior consent requirement is also there in this bill, which the central government can make. And second is that apart from that, there is something called D&D. This D&D, do not disturb. So do not disturb register. Do not disturb register is also being proposed to be set up under this do not disturb register, which means that simply it says that it means that if you the companies cannot disturb you. If you say that I don't want to receive marketing calls from this, etc., then the companies will not allow routing of such calls to you. So do not disturb. The registry is supposed to be set up, etc. And there are also a three-tier mechanism, three-tier grievance redressal mechanism being set up, right? Up to the level of TDSAT. TDSAT, you may know that Telecom dispute, right? Telecom disputes appellate tribunal. TDSAT. So TDSAT is there. This appellate tribunal will deal with grievances at the apex level. So this is an important aspect of this bill because on the one hand, the government is trying to reform the legislation. On the other, the government is trying to bring provisions, steps for making the customer, the experience of the customer with respect to the telecom services more, more pleasing, I would say, right? Because if you receive a lot of calls and messages, like they can be fake, spam, etc., which not only create mental harassment but also have financial ramifications. So this is an important step which the government is trying to do. Apart from that, you see this bill has provisions for interception, search, suspension, etc. We'll deal with this aspect in the criticism, but for the time being, let us understand the government, the federal government or authorized officers of the government, both at the central as well as state government, can intercept, block, monitor various messages which are being transmitted for public safety and public emergency. There are some grounds under which it can be done: security of state, incitement offense, public order, etc. So on these grounds, for maintaining public safety and to address public emergency, the government can, authorized officers of the government can intercept, monitor, block the messages, right? And apart from that, authorized officers can also search and seize the telecom equipments, various vessels, enterprises, etc., because if they have the reason to believe that these activities are being conducted without authorization from the government, which means without permission from the government, without express authorization by the government, if you are carrying out telecom activities, if you are having telecom equipment, if you are using it, etc., then authorized government officers can search your premises and also seize the equipment, etc., which can be done. And also suspension. As you know, a Telegraph Act early 1885 also provides for suspension of internet. We call it as internet shutdown, which most of you have been very familiar with, like in Manipur, Rajasthan, etc. You must be knowing that whenever there are exams, competitive examination, etc., the internet is shut down. There are law and order issues, internet shutdown, etc. So internet shutdown, the power to shut down internet stems from the earlier Telegraph Act. Now this act is replacing that act, so the power of suspension, shutdown, etc. is also provided under this act. Apart from that, another important thing is that it also amended the TRI Act. There is an act called TRI Act 1997. TRI Act 1997. TRI means Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. TRI, the regulator for the telecom sector, right? this act amends TRI Act, and it makes the eligibility condition for the chairman and the members of TRI. I would say it amends the eligibility condition, because if a person having 30 years of professional experience, then the person can be appointed as the chairman of the TRI, and if a person having 25 years, then member, etc. The fundamental idea behind this amendment of TRI Act is to have private sector professionals working in telecom sector to be part of the regulation, TRI system. Generally what happens is that the secretaries, retired secretaries and others are being appointed to TRI, etc., etc. So we require more innovative professional people from private sector, right? So that is the reason one of this eligibility criteria has been amended. Apart from that, another aspect is that you must have heard about something called Universal Service Obligation Fund. Universal Service Obligation Fund. What does it mean? There are multiple areas in this country which are underserved or unserved by telecom operators. Remote areas, hilly area, right, tribal areas, or areas where customer base is very low. So these areas will have very less network coverage as well as very less presence of telecom operators. We must know that when we travel through train, etc., we know that there are multiple areas where this network is not available. Why? Because that area is not served by the telecom operators, because profit is very less. So, in order to address those concerns, the profits of the telecom operators, some percentage should be devoted to something called Universal Service Obligation Fund, which is kept under the Government of India. The fund will be utilized for providing service, creating telecom infrastructure in underserved or unserved areas. Now the Government of India has changed its name. Digital Bharat Nidhi. Digital Bharat Nidhi Fund. You know that everything requires Bharat. So the government decided that let us change the name. Let me see. Digital Bharat Nidhi. Yes, it is not fund. This Nidhi is known as fund, right? Nidhi in Hindi, I think, is fund, money. For Digital Bharat Nidhi, Digital Bharat Nidhi replaced USOF. One additional provision added in Digital Bharat Nidhi. What is that? Apart from creating infrastructure, service, etc., in those areas, the fund under this Bharat Nidhi will also be used for research and development in telecom sector. If you do something, if you make some changes, if you bring something new, it cannot be only in name. Should add something, right? So in order to make it new, government said, yes, we'll also use the money for research and development. Otherwise, people like you will say, see, government, what the government is doing, only changing name, nothing new. So the government brought this change. Now, apart from this, these are some important features, right? Now, the question is, let us see some significance of the bill. Why this bill has been brought? Significance, benefits, right, reasons, all these are same. The significance of this bill is, I would say, first important significance is that it provides, it consolidates the laws, the consolidation of the legal framework with respect to telecom sector. As I mentioned earlier, there were three laws: 1885 law, the 1933 law, and 1950 law. So what the government is doing, it is bringing these laws together and providing a single legal framework. And the single legal framework not only comprehensive but also consolidative. Apart from this single framework is also a modern legal framework. A modern legal framework, because this addresses the current innovation, current developments in telecom sector. So comprehensiveness, consolidation, modern legal framework, which will provide a dynamic, innovative, flexible environment, condition for the telecom sector to grow. Apart from this, another important change is that authorization. Earlier, there are 100 plus requirements in the previous laws like registration, permission, right, license, etc., etc. Now the government has replaced all those aspects with one single term, authorization. You see, if a company which wants to start business or continue business or operate in telecom sector, if it has to take a lot of permission, this licenses, and other etc., then it will create a lot of problems for the business. It will increase its cost of operation, compliance, and also that there are opportunity for corruption, etc., etc. So the government has tried to address that problem by bringing one single authorization. If authorization is given, then you can carry out multiple type of activities in that. So this is an approach towards ease of doing business. Ease of doing business and encouraging telecom innovation in the telecom sector. Significance. Apart from that, another significance is that this law or this Telecom Act brings India on a par with the allocation of spectrum frequency. In general, at the international level, if you see, generally spectrum, especially those dealing with cutting edge technology, is allocated based on administrative basis. Which means the government has some mechanisms through which it does, not auction. So, if you remember, the first schedule to the Act has a lot of activities which exclude auction method and give the allocation method, administrative allocation, which brings India on a par with international scenario. At the international level, if you see Elon Musk and the Amazon, and that they have that Starlink, etc., etc. So satellite communication is something it is the future of the telecom sector, and we should provide a conducive environment for them, right? And spectrum is required for them. If you provide spectrum through auction, then what happens is that the cost of operation will be high. Administrative allocation is a better method, an internationally acceptable method of allocation of spectrum with respect to satellite communication and various other cutting edge technologies. So, which this bring India on a equal wavelength with respect to the international level. Apart from that, you can say significance in the sense that you see there is a view. I am not saying this bill excludes, or this act excludes the internet-based provision of telecom services. Internet-based WhatsApp, right? The Signal, Telegram, etc., etc. Because the act does not specifically provide for regulation of internet-based telecom services. So that is the reason this industry, experts, in fact, the OTT, the WhatsApp and various others, they have held this act an important step towards freedom to business, especially those internet-based service providers, right? But I will explain this in the criticism. But for the time being, significance is that the text of the act does not include the OTT, internet-based telecom services, etc., etc., right? Which means that they will be governed under the IT rule, in Information Technology Act. So, which means that there is less regulatory burden, more freedom on the internet-based telecom sector. But another significance, significance is that it provides a system for consumer benefit, system for grievance redressal. It makes it mandatory for the telecom providers to set up designated officers, and there will be a designated officer at the government level. And finally, you can go to the appellate tribunal. A system of a dedicated, streamlined, systematic system of grievance redressal is being set up, which means the customer will have a more benefit in the sense that they will not be unduly harassed through marketing calls, through spams and fake messages, etc., etc., right? So consumer will have more choices. And not only that, this act provides stringent penalties Civil penalty means fine if there are criminal the criminal liability is also there. So penalties being there are huge penalties, right? So and the amount of this penalty, like let's say if you are using the telecom equipment service without authorization, then there is 5 crore, something like that, right? And if an individual is misusing any of the provisions, etc., then huge penalty. So penalty is provided, both civil as well as the criminal liability is there, which means this penalties will act as a deterrent. It will create some kind of fear in the mind of people, as well as the people who are misusing the telecom services, and also the telecom companies also. So this penalty system will create deterrence, which means there will be more compliance to the letter of the law, and there will be less problems as far as the administration is concerned.
Blackmailing also is included.
Huh?
Blackmailing.
Yes. Multiple aspects are covered under this. It also makes mandatory. Biometrics is mandatory if you want to get telecom services, right? And if there is mandatory biometric, then it is very much possible to identify the person who has committed crime. But it is a problem. We'll see that later. So this bill is significant. It has a huge significance. But our major point of discussion is not this. Our major point of discussion is the issues, criticism. I am using the word act because it has become an act. The major point is this. The first major point of criticism is it provides for what we know as interception. I explained interception, right? Interception. Now, it only says interception can be done by authorized officers for public emergency and public safety, right? Under this ground. But the question is, no safeguard is provided. No procedure is provided. Who will do? How will it do? When will it do? If it violates the provision, then what are the recourses? What are the justice? How will you get justice? It simply says this will be done, interception. You see, whatever message you are giving to somebody, you are talking, calling, sending message, etc. It is a private communication. No third party should ideally have access to it. But in the name of security, etc., the government is trying to intercept. You must have seen in multiple movies, na? Criminals are talking and the police is hearing. But the question is, if they have access to any of the communication, it simply says who will see. It should be like, it cannot be given. Let's say police can do. But in police, who? SP? Yeah. Commissioner? Yeah, constable? Sub inspector? Everybody? No. There should be, that's what, there should be safeguards and procedures. Who will authorize? Who will conduct? Up to what time it will be done? What happens if it is unethical, wrong, illegal, etc. So no safeguards, no procedures are given under the law. Under that it is not given. It simply says it will be prescribed by the government. Which means the government by rule. The government by rule will prescribe. Yeah, ultimately what happens is that whenever a law is made and an act is made, the major provision, major aspects of the issue which the law is trying to address will be covered, and various other details for implementation will be done by government by rule. Rule can be made by the government. But this rule making power of the government cannot be misused. You see, if this who does this who will carry out intercepting your messages? The government and its agencies. If you at the central level, the CBI, ED, NCB, DRA, Signal Intelligence, etc., have the power to intercept. Even Delhi Commissioner also has power to intercept your message. Which means the government of India is doing, or the state government is doing. Now who is making rule? Central government will make rule. You are the one who is intercepting and you are making rule. So the rules will be made, may be made in such a way to protect the government functionaries and to carry out mass interception. Your safety, privacy of citizens are violated here. Right? if the idea what we are saying is that this procedures and safeguards should have been given under the act itself, not in rule, because the government is the one who is doing it and the government is making rule. Because this is important, because in 1885, you see 1885 Act, the Telegraph Act 1885 also had the provision for the interception of messages, phone tapping. This is popularly known as phone tapping. Must have heard about this word, phone tapping. Phone tapping. This phone tapping did not have any procedure or safeguard under 1885 Act till the Supreme Court in 1996. There is a judgment of Supreme Court, PUCL versus Union of India. We hardly see such judgment these days. Whatever we are teaching you, it's before 2014 in general. You hardly find anything after that. But anyway, just kidding. PUCL, People's Union for Civil Liberties versus Union of India case 1996. In this, Supreme Court has asked the government, federal government, to bring rules to provide safeguards, procedures for phone tapping. Under this, Rule 419A was brought by the government. Under this rule says, phone tapping, yes, phone tapping will be there. At the central level, the secretary to the government at the home ministry level will authorize phone tapping. At the state level, the secretary in charge at the home will authorize, and there will be a review committee at the cabinet secretary level, right? And at the state level, there will be chief secretary level review committee, and there are multiple other portions, etc., etc., etc. But the fundamental problem with that, with those rules, are no public disclosure. If your phone is tapped, how will you know whether your phone is tapped or not? You cannot know until unless if you are using Apple, etc., other technology companies tell you that your fan, this Pegasus is there in your mobile, etc., etc. But Supreme Court says that it will not listen to third-party arguments. Press report cannot be the basis for launching inquiry, etc., etc. Then what does the Supreme Court think? The government of India will provide proof against the government of India. That is what they are saying. But anyway, the point is that the system which was provided under 491A and this 419A was non-transparent. The people who are being subjected to phone tapping did not have any rule, any knowledge of this, because this data is not being given. And recently, the Delhi government, Delhi High Court refused to provide this information because one person has put an RTI seeking the number of phone tapping which you conducted in particular year, etc., etc. The government said that this is not applicable under RTI, and the Delhi High Court also supported the government. In fact, the courts in India have become more government oriented, and it is difficult to find, difficult to distinguish which is court and which is the government. But anyway, but the point is that even this 419A has not been incorporated in the Act. What we are saying that the Act should have had at least some procedural safeguards, and for that this interception system will not be misused. But no, it simply says rules, and the rules will be made by the government. And if they simply reformulate or simply say that okay, this rule, if they simply reformulate these rules, then the existing inadequacies, non-transparencies with respect to phone tapping will continue. Now, related with this issue is the system. It's an executive dominated system. A police commissioner might, let's say, a home secretary at the state level might authorize phone tapping. And who will review this? There is a review committee headed by chief secretary. Chief Secretary is the government, Home Secretary is also government. And when will they meet? It is as per this rule, within 2 months, at least once they should meet. So until unless they meet, the phone tapping can continue. If they find that this or the order is not appropriate, then what will they do? They will say this is not appropriate. Then the phone tapping will stop. But if it is not appropriate, which means it is illegal. If it is illegal, what will happen to what you have done? No recourse to that. The point is that the person who is doing phone tapping is government. Who is authorizing is government. Who is reviewing it is also government. When government dominated system, this is not appropriate. If the government dominates the system of interception, then it is perceived that, or it is held that it is difficult to bring transparency and accountability. So judicial oversight over the system is required. That is, if you see UK and Australia, United Kingdom, Australia, etc. This interception require judicial sanction. Simply means authorization will be given by the magistrate or a judge, judicial commissioner, which means simply executive, judiciary separation. So judicial sanction is required. But in India it is entirely an executive dominated system. If you are bringing a law which you call modern and you want to decolonize the legal framework, then you should have changed these things. Simply changing the name is not enough. What you are doing is, you are simply changing the name. But you are not dealing with the most crucial aspects. Colonial government wanted to control people. A democratic government should provide freedom to people. But here what is happening? Only name change is there and the government is having huge control. This is very much serious in the context of the definition of telecom services. Government, the act says that any telecom service, telecommunication is any telecom service, any telecom service, any telecommunication service. What is this any telecommunication service? The definition, you see the definition of telecom means any telecom service, any transmission. So these words are so vague. If you remember, I mentioned that industry champions, experts are saying that OTT, WhatsApp, etc. are not part of it. We are happy. No. If you read the text, it is true that explicitly, specifically these are not mentioned. But the wordings are like that. Any telecom services, any telecom transmission. This can be interpreted to include all the telecom, even internet based. Not only that, the word message is defined in the act, which has video, audio, wide definition. Now video calling, can you have video calling through telephone? Telephone, normal telephone, you cannot.
Only Android and
It is through mobile, na? This normal landline you cannot have. Through normal landline you cannot send messages. So it is through this. So the message is defined in such a way and the telecom is defined in such a way, which means that it is cleverly drafted. On a plain reading you will find that these are not included, excluded. But no, the words can be interpreted to include the over-the-top services, WhatsApp, Gmail, email, any medium of communication.
social media platform, all these things being applied.
Eh?
Social media platform.
Absolutely, yes. So we never know. So on the one hand, it's an executive controlled system having no safeguards and procedures, and if at all given, will be given by the government. And on the top of that, if you read the text of the bill, which means any and all telecom services can be brought under the provision of this bill, which means all these things will be applicable. So it's a broad system. Whenever you are making law, you should make it perfect. Try to make it perfect. You should define narrowly, because these laws are affecting rights of people, privacy, etc., etc. Now there is a problem here, because you explicitly did not say. But if ultimately the words can be defined in such a way. Although it is true that one minister has said it is not applicable to this, some official is said. Why are you saying that? You should bring that in the law. What is the purpose of an act then? If you want to provide clarification, then what is the need of a law? You simply provide clarification, or you bring orders. A law should be having clarity, less confusion. Not only this, if you see, I mentioned this, power to search, seizure, power to search, government officers can have power of search. Let's say here we are speaking, we are having some, let's say the person can have reason to believe that some illegal activity is going on here, can come and confiscate, arrest, etc. He can do whatever he wants. But no procedure is given. Under what circumstances he will do? What if he tries to do illegally? What if there is violation of my right? No procedure is given, no safeguard is given, not only in rule. Simply here, as far as interception is concerned, at least the government says we will provide in rule making. But as far as the search feature is concerned, nothing is given. A blanket immunity kind of thing is given to the officer. Arbitrariness will be there. Anybody can come to any place. I have reason to believe this is going on. Simply come, search, seizure, arrest, whatever he can do. What kind of system is this? If it is this system, then where will be ease of doing business? There will be where there will be consumer friendliness. How will you protect the rights of people? Not only that, another important issue with this bill act is this encryption. If you see your WhatsApp, you will find that messages are end-to-end encrypted. WhatsApp messages, encryption, which means the person who is sending and who is receiving can only read it. Nobody else can read, because it is codified in such a way. Even if somebody has access to it in between, the person may not be able to read, because the encryption, it is coded in such a way, encryption. Now the government says, under this, the government will provide standard of encryption. Standards of encryption, which is how you will encrypt the messages will be defined by government, which means the government will have the standard of encryption. The government can read each and every messages, irrespective of the platform. That is the reason this act is called as an act for digital authoritarianism. Digital authoritarianism, violation of privacy, mass surveillance. Not only that, apart from this encryption, if you want to avail any telecom services, then you need to provide your biometric data, biometric. Let's say you want to buy a SIM card. Okay, SIM card. There is another portion in this law which says that the government will notify how many SIM cards a person can have.
Yes, exactly. But it is not, in this time it's not ruled to how many cards.
Why should the government say how many you should have? Let's say I am an ordinary person. Tomorrow I start a business. So I require SIMs. For that, should I go to the government? Government will say, why do you want it? Tell me, go there and get a permission from the district magistrate or the police, etc., etc. Why is it so? So the point is that you are creating problems, na? The government is trying to reform, reduce maximum government. You should know this. Maximum governance, minimum government. Minimum government. Is this minimum government? Everywhere government. How much SIM you will have? And after they will say who you will call. We will decide. What messages you will send, we will decide. Like in China, the North Korea phone, the phones in North Korea, The government, their officials can anytime, anywhere can check your phone.
Yes, yes.
In North Korea, multiple applications are not allowed.
Yeah.
Do you want such a system in India?
No, sir.
Then what is the role of the government to say how much SIM you will have?
Yes.
Apart from that, if you want to have a SIM, then you should provide biometric. As of today, if you want to have a SIM, you can provide PAN card, voter ID, etc. But it says you should provide your biometric. Biometric can be your thumb impression, fingerprint, retina, DNA, etc., etc., which will be decided by the government. The question is why? Why?
Yeah.
Because this biometric data is personal data. Personal. Because this biometric data has huge significance as a person is concerned. This biometric data is also known as sensitive personal data. Sensitive, more important data. And many a time it is seen that the biometric has been used, biometric systems, biometric is used to siphon off money from people. Multiple frauds are happening. Not only that, the biometric system is also used to, imprison people. The point is that if you have biometric, then it is easy to identify people.
So rations are distributing,
Ah.
ration, they will be also using a thumb.
Yes. The biometric has some purpose, which the Supreme Court has explained in Puttaswamy judgment 2017. Right. So the purpose of biometric is very limited. You cannot extend to others, because if you extend it, then it is a violation of privacy of individuals. This data is highly sensitive to people. Not only that, there is a huge scope for misusing it by criminal investigative agencies as well as fraudsters. That is why this cannot be used for very easy, silly purposes. To get a SIM, if you can have voter ID and others, then what is need of this? There is a word called proportionality. Because if an activity or an action of the government is violating your fundamental right to privacy, right, then it should satisfy the test of proportionality, balance. Only question I am asking is this. Why does the government demand that a person who is taking SIM should provide biometric? Why? Because whenever a person misuses that SIM, phone call, etc., then it is easy to find out the person.
Easily to figure out.
But the question is, how many of the people will do it? How many Indians are corrupt or criminal? Very less. And is this the only way through which we can identify people? There are multiple other ways. And is it possible for us to get SIM card through other identification method, through which also you can identify people? If I give proper voter ID, then the person, the service provider will have details of me. And if the enforcement, police and other authorities demand, then they will provide it. So my identity can also be found out through other mechanism, PAN card, voter ID, etc., etc. There is no rationale for providing biometric. Because the biometric means it's like bringing Aadhaar system. When the Supreme Court gave the judgment of the Aadhaar, the Supreme Court said that there is a limitation for using biometric. There should be proportionality principle, legitimacy, etc., etc. It seems that this biometric requirement for getting a SIM card violates the judgment of the Supreme Court. There are multiple other ways of getting a SIM card with proper authentic identity, like voter ID and PAN card. There is a need for this. And there are multiple problems of using biometric. You may be falsely implicated by the criminal investigative agencies. Secondly, there are multiple options for siphoning of money, frauds, etc. using biometric. Right. Now, if you see this entire law, apart from the specific issues with respect to this, I just wanted to take 5 minutes to explain the manner in which this bill is passed. This bill is introduced as a money bill, which means Rajya Sabha's role is negligible. The question is, why did you introduce a Telecom Act? Telecom Act is a money bill. Number one. Number two, this bill was passed within 2 days, I think, without any meaningful discussion in Parliament, where more than 140 MPs have been suspended in both houses of Parliament. Right? And not only that, Okay, so what is the purpose of bringing a bill? If you see, this 2023 bill preceded by a draft telecom bill 2022. A draft telecom bill 2022 was introduced by the government of India, and the government of India asked for public feedback. People, it was put in public domain, people gave feedback. We took an ED on that draft telecom bill 2022 when it was done, right? Now the question is, public feedback given 2022. But what were those public feedback? The Department of Telecom did not disclose it. People demanded through RTI. Tell us, why did you retain this colonial authoritarian provision in this act? What were the public feedback, public comments you received? The purpose of putting a bill in public domain is to seek public opinion, expert opinion, and on the basis of that, if at all required, amend the bill, change the bill, reform the bill. Only when we public know that what kind of feedback is given, what kind of feedback is received by the ministry, and what the ministry did on that, whether the ministry simply did the formality.
What is the profit of the feedback?
Absolutely. What is the reason for putting a bill in public domain if you are not publicizing the details? What action you have taken on the feedback? Nothing is being done. And this bill suddenly introduced, passed. This has been a trend of this government. Critics say that this has been a trend of this government. Simply bringing bill without any proper deliberation, consultation and passing it, and trying to simply use the parliament only for the sake of formality. And not only that, if you see, this bill also, this act also have huge scope for delegated legislation, delegate rule making. This rule making power is also, I have discussed that in broadcasting bill, digital personal data bill, etc., etc. This has been a trend, a phenomenon of this government, because if there are huge scope for rule making, then the rule making power can be misused by the government. This bill says that the government by rule can exempt some agencies. They can exempt some agency which the government feels that are pro-government. Not only that, prescribed by rule. When there are huge scope for rule making power for the government, then the government, it simply means that there is violation of separation of power. The law making is the power of the legislature. Delegated legislation should be limited in scope, but more than 45 places, scope for delegated legislation is there, which means the government can essentially fill the most important aspects of the law, which ultimately affects the freedom of people, the fundamental rights of people, privacy of the people. When such a law is made without adequate consultation, deliberation, Parliament Standing Committee, scrutiny, if you remember, one of the member in Lok Sabha demanded that this bill should be sent to Parliament Standing Committee on IT. Not done. What for we have Standing Committee? What for we have Parliament? What for we have pre-litigation scrutiny? For what purpose? If the role of Parliament is simply to provide an stamp of approval to the law or the bill brought by the executive, what is the role of the minister? It's very difficult to, justify these actions, right? But apart from that, you see, there are fundamental flaws in this bill. Although there are some good provisions, significant changes, but essentially, the content, the nature of this bill seems to be reproduction of the colonial authoritarian control over the people who are using this. That is the reason it is being criticized for providing a system for surveillance, mass surveillance, and also deliberately providing vague definitions for which can be used by the government and its agencies to scrutinize, to control the various users of telecom sector as well as the telecom companies. But again, Apart from this, you see, yes, there are criticism. Every every action of the government will have criticism. But the point is that yes, apart from these issues, significance is there. It's an attempt to overhaul the colonial telecommunication regulation system, right, and to provide business-friendly environment, right. But however, this concern which we raised need to be addressed. And how it can be addressed? One thing you can say, now it has become an act, the government should use the rule-making power to provide more clarity. And the rule should be made after consultation, deliberation. When the law is made, you did not properly consult or did deliberation. One of the major problem with this lack of deliberation, consultation is, which you have seen couple of days before. Criminal laws amendment. 3 new criminal laws were brought, replacing IPC, CRPC, Evidence Act, etc. The truck drivers were in protest for a couple of days, although yesterday night they called off. Why did they protest? They protest there because hit and run. 10 years imprisonment and 7 lakh. Now, what the government said, you see, the laws have not been implemented. Before implementing this provision, we will consult you. Why can't you consult earlier? What for parliament is there? If there was proper deliberation, debate, etc., in committees and parliament, even open hearing, public consultation, etc., all these issues would have come out. But you did not do it. Yes. You made a law in closed door. Yeah. Whenever such a law is made, its implementation will suffer. Like this. Government will have to do firefighting then. This is something which we cannot accept. Truck drivers are the one who will be affected by this. Whether this law is correct or not, we are not saying. But ultimately, you address their concern before bringing the law. Why do you want to do after that? And what has caused 2 days? What happened? Huge problem. It not only created problem for people like you and me, but it also created a problem in the economy. Billions of dollars of money have been wasted. Transportation, because everything is linked to transportation. Why did you want to create such a situation?
Same happening in Kisan will also have project.
Absolutely. The government seems to have learned no lesson. Critics say. You should use the system. You cannot have this. The way of passing bill, the problem is that we are not saying, the bill have some issues, etc. But the manner, the method of bringing bill, passing bill should be proper. Otherwise, the implementation will suffer.
Yes, absolutely going on.
Absolutely. Right. So, apart from this, when the rules are being framed, there should be proper consultation, discussion, deliberation, so that there will be there will be more clarity. Ideally, the bill should specifically say, or the rule should specifically say that OTT and other platforms will not be regulated under this, because ultimately these things are part of Information Technology, IT Act. It should be done that. It should be in this. The rule should specify. Apart from that, you see, apart from that, there are some crucial issues like interception, etc., etc. If through rules you cannot change it, then it is necessary to amend this rule. Or as you know that the provisions of this law will come into effect by the federal government notification. So some provisions need not to be notified, which means it will not come into effect. There is nothing wrong if the government finds that yes, there are some problems which can be addressed through amendment or through other laws too. So there are some significant serious issues with respect to this bill which need to be addressed. And we can take the international scenario to bring judicial oversight. Right? Judicial oversight can be brought and reduce scope for arbitrariness. Right? And if required, some amendments can be done. But the manner of passing these bills cannot be appreciated. However, this bill has also an important step, positive aspects like replacing the license permit system from an authorization system and system of grievance redressal, right? and also promote ease of doing business in the context of satellite communication, etc., etc. However, these challenges or these issues need to be addressed. Right? Thank you so much. Anything you want to ask, you can ask.
सर आप सिम के बारे में बता रहे थे तो सर मार्केट में बहुत सारे ऐसे सिम है जो ब्लैक में मिलते हैं तो बिना उसका आईडी प्रूफ के तो उसके लिए क्या हम कर सकते हैं जो उसको
If people want to sell this fake SIM cards, then if people want to it will continue. If people want to do some wrong things, no law can prevent them.
तो सर लोग तो वही उसी चीज का फायदा उठा रहे हैं ना कि जहाँ भी वो करप्ट हो रहे हैं जहाँ भी कोई ब्लैकमेल कर रहा है कोई धमकियाँ दे रहे हैं फेक कॉल्स इस तरह की चीजें तो वो एक आईडी प्रूफ के थ्रू नहीं होता जो सिम्स होते हैं वो बेसिकली वो इलीगल सिम होते हैं ब्लैक सिम होते हैं
If a person wants to buy an illegal SIM, if a person wants to sell an illegal SIM, neither the person who is selling the SIM will ask for actual ID, nor the person who is buying the SIM will give actual ID.
बट सर मार्केट में जो वो भी लोग बेच ही रहे हैं
हाँ, it is available ना, it will be available. Even if you bring this system, it will be available. If laws can address all the problems of the country, then India would have been a heaven. There are multiple laws. Criminal laws are there, traffic rules. There are traffic rules. How many times people are obeying traffic rules? Laws are not a problem. Not having laws are not essentially the issue.
implementing is most important
Implementing as well, people might find a lot of other ways of avoiding it. Illegal activity and drug law is there, but you know this what is happening. Prohibition, drinks in Bihar and other area, but you know this what is happening. Manufacturing of arms. There are manufacturing factories in India. Illegal, still happening. You have seen that movie, not movie, that web series. It's a what is that? This web series. पंकज त्रिपाठी कालीन भैया वाला हाँ मिर्जापुर you see things will happen but these things need to be addressed but the point is that this seems to be excessive biometric and others etc. The threat of this surveillance violation of privacy etc need to be addressed.
आईडी प्रूफ के साथ 200 रुपए के सिम मिलते हैं अब ब्लैक सिम 50 रुपए मिलते हैं
people it will continue but the government should try to stop it. If such illegal activities are continuing, it shows the lack of efficiency of the government and the police.
Sir, if government will be stopped, so when is start? Because already time is very
It will continue, but it's necessary that we should take steps to reduce it through constant enforcement of law, to constant checking, etc. These things can be stopped to some extent, but to eradicate these issues, it will be very difficult. But slowly we can do. Okay then, thank you so much.